The town was as ordinary as they came. Nestled in the heart of America's Midwest, it had everything you'd expect. Cornfields stretching endlessly under the sun, a sleepy main street lined with mom-and-pop shops, and people who knew each other by name but rarely spoke about anything beyond the weather or local gossip. Life here moved at its own unhurried pace, untouched by the chaos of big cities or the noise of modern life. But for one resident, the nights were anything but quiet. He wasn't like the others. He preferred solitude, spending most evenings perched on his backyard deck with a steaming cup of coffee and his prized possession, a homemade telescope that looked more like a science project than an expensive piece of equipment. To him, though, it was perfect. It let him peer into the vastness of space, where mysteries waited to be uncovered. He didn't have a title or a degree. People around town just called him the Watcher. Some thought he was eccentric, maybe even a little odd, but no one could deny his passion. Every clear night, he scanned the skies, charting stars, tracking satellites, and marveling at the beauty of the cosmos. For years, this routine brought him peace, until one evening, something changed. It started subtly. A faint blinking light near the constellation Orion. At first, he dismissed it as a passing satellite, or perhaps a glitch in his telescope. But as the days went by, the light remained. It blinked rhythmically, almost like Morse code, and seemed to hover in place rather than drift across the sky. Curiosity turned into obsession. The Watcher began logging every detail, the timing of the blinks, their pattern, and how they shifted ever so slightly over time. When he shared his findings online, reactions were mixed. Amateur astronomers debated whether it was real or some kind of optical illusion. Conspiracy theorists jumped on board, claiming it was proof of extraterrestrial activity. Skeptics rolled their eyes, accusing him of fabricating evidence for attention. Locals laughed nervously, calling him that UFO guy behind his back. Despite the ridicule, the Watcher couldn't shake the feeling that what he was seeing was significant. Then strange things started happening in the town. Power lines would flicker without explanation. Cows wandered out of their pens at night, only to return hours later looking dazed. Even pets acted strangely, barking at empty skies or hiding under furniture for no apparent reason. People whispered about being watched, though they couldn't explain why. Fear crept in slowly, like shadows lengthening at dusk. One chilly autumn night, the Watcher decided to take his observations further. Armed with a camera mounted to his telescope, he recorded hours of footage. What he captured sent chills down his spine. On playback, the blinking light appeared sharper, clearer, and unmistakably artificial. It wasn't alone either. Surrounding it were smaller dots, moving in synchronized patterns that defied natural explanation. They formed shapes, dissolved, then reformed again, as if communicating silently. As dawn broke, exhaustion finally caught up with him. Slumped in his chair, he stared at the screen, replaying the video over and over. His mind raced with questions. Was this some secret government experiment? Or was it something else? Whatever it was, it felt deliberate, purposeful, almost like it was trying to tell him something. Word spread quickly after he uploaded the footage online. Within hours, his social media feed exploded with comments, shares, and theories. Scientists weighed in, dissecting every frame while cautioning against jumping to conclusions. Meanwhile, anonymous messages flooded his inbox. Some praised his discovery, others warned him to stop digging before it was too late. One message stood out: they're already here. Despite the mounting pressure, the watcher refused to back down. Something inside told him this was bigger than himself, bigger than the town, even bigger than Earth itself. And yet, as he gazed through his telescope that night, he couldn't help but feel small, a speck of dust floating in an infinite universe, completely unaware of the storm brewing above. What he didn't know was that the blinking light wasn't just watching, it was waiting, waiting for humanity to notice, waiting for someone brave enough to ask the right questions. Little did he realize those questions would soon lead to answers far beyond anything he or anyone else could have imagined. The video of the blinking light went viral overnight. Screenshots of the footage were plastered across news websites, social media feeds, and even late-night talk shows. Everyone had an opinion. Some dismissed it as a hoax, while others speculated wildly about its origins. But one thing was undeniable: the world was paying attention. Scientists around the globe scrambled to analyze the data. Astrophysicists pored over star charts, trying to pinpoint where the object might have come from. Engineers studied the patterns in the blinking light, searching for any hint of logic or structure. Meanwhile, conspiracy theorists took to their platforms, spinning tales of government cover-ups and secret experiments. The watcher's quiet life in the Midwest town became anything but peaceful. Reporters camped outside his house, eager for a statement. Strangers sent him emails filled with questions, theories, and sometimes outright threats. Despite the chaos, the watcher stayed focused. He continued recording every night, determined to uncover more. And then something extraordinary happened. People all over the planet began reporting similar sightings. In bustling cities and remote villages alike, the witnesses described strange lights moving in synchronized patterns across the sky. Some claimed these objects hovered silently above power plants or military bases before vanishing without a trace. Others swore they could hear faint humming sounds when the lights appeared. It was as if the entire world had been pulled into the same mystery. Back in the small Midwest town, unease grew thicker by the day. Residents whispered nervously about what it all meant. Were they being watched? By whom? Or what? One farmer reported finding unusual markings in his fields one morning. The designs were intricate, geometric patterns pressed into the soil with surgical precision. Experts arrived to investigate, but none could explain how such complex shapes had been created overnight. Rumors spread that aliens were sending messages, though no one could decipher them. As curiosity turned to fear, governments finally stepped in. Official statements urged calm, assuring citizens there was no immediate threat. Yet behind closed doors, leaders convened emergency meetings. Military forces were put on high alert, and classified documents hinted at knowledge far beyond public awareness. The watcher received cryptic warnings through anonymous channels, telling him to stop sharing his findings. "You're playing with fire," one message read. But he couldn't stop now, not when answers felt so close. Then came the moment that changed everything. During a live broadcast of the mysterious object, the blinking lights suddenly shifted. Instead of their usual rhythm, they began pulsing in rapid bursts, forming patterns that resembled numbers and symbols. Viewers worldwide watched in stunned silence as the sequence spelled out coordinates pointing to a remote desert location hundreds of miles away. The revelation sent shock waves through society. Was this an invitation, a challenge, or something else entirely? Speculation ran rampant. Some believed it was a trap set by hostile forces, while others saw it as humanity's chance to make contact with beings from another world. Either way, the coordinates became a beacon, drawing adventurers, researchers, and thrill seekers from every corner of the globe. For the watcher, the decision was agonizing. Part of him wanted to ignore the call, to retreat back into the safety of his quiet life. But another part, the part driven by curiosity and wonder, knew he couldn't turn away. This was bigger than him, bigger than the town, bigger than Earth itself. If there was even a slim chance of understanding who or what was watching them, he had to take it. He packed lightly, a camera, a notebook, some water, and a flashlight. As he drove toward the desert, his mind raced with possibilities. What would he find at those coordinates? Would anyone else show up? And most importantly, would he survive long enough to share what he discovered? When he arrived, and the landscape was desolate, barren except for scattered rocks and patches of dry brush. The air carried a stillness that felt almost unnatural, like the earth itself was holding its breath. Night fell quickly, plunging the area into darkness. Stars glittered overhead, brighter here than anywhere else he'd ever seen. For a while, nothing happened, just silence. Then as midnight approached, the ground trembled beneath his feet. At first it was subtle, a low vibration, barely noticeable. But soon, the shaking intensified, accompanied by a deep, resonant hum that seemed to emanate from the very core of the planet. The watcher stumbled backward, heart pounding, as a glowing structure materialized before his eyes. It wasn't solid exactly. It shimmered like liquid metal, shifting and pulsating with an otherworldly energy. Its surface reflected the stars above, creating an illusion of infinite depth. Standing there, dwarfed by the immense presence of the structure, the watcher felt both awe and terror. This was it, the moment he'd been chasing all along. Whatever lay beyond that glowing portal held the answers he'd been seeking. But as he stared into its depths, he couldn't shake the feeling that stepping forward would change everything, for better or worse. Behind him, headlights pierced the darkness as vehicles approached. Others had followed the coordinates too. Together, they formed a hesitant circle around the structure, united by a mix of fear and fascination. No one spoke. Words felt inadequate in them of what they were witnessing. One person broke the silence, holding up a tablet displaying a simple mathematical sequence. They pointed it toward the structure, hoping for a response. Seconds ticked by, each one stretching longer than the last. Then, without warning, the structure reacted. Beams of light shot outward, enveloping the group in warmth. Images flooded their minds, planets spinning in distant galaxies, civilizations rising and falling, and finally humans, always humans, watching, studying, waiting. When the vision ended, The structure vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving only silence in its wake. The group stood frozen, overwhelmed by what they'd experienced. None of them doubted anymore. They weren't alone in the universe. Someone or something was watching them closely. And whatever happened next, humanity would never be the same again. The desert was eerily quiet after the glowing structure disappeared. The group stood frozen, their minds racing to process what they'd just witnessed. Each person had experienced the same vision: images of distant planets, ancient civilizations, and humanity itself. But interpreting it was another matter entirely. Some were overwhelmed with awe, others with fear. No one spoke at first. Words felt too small to capture the enormity of what had happened. Finally, someone broke the silence. "What? What was that?" Their voice trembled, barely audible over the rustling wind. Another stepped forward, clutching the tablet that had triggered the response. "It's like they're trying to talk to us or show us something." The watcher nodded slowly, his face pale but resolute. He'd spent years searching for answers, and now he had them, or at least a glimpse of them. But those answers raised more questions than they resolved. As dawn approached, the group decided to head back to civilization. They agreed not to share what they'd seen. Not yet. Something about the experience felt sacred, private, as if revealing it too soon might diminish its significance. Besides, none of them were sure how the world would react. Would people believe them? Or would they dismiss it as another wild conspiracy theory? Back in the town where it all began, life seemed almost surreal. The streets buzzed with chatter about the mysterious coordinates and the growing number of UFO sightings worldwide. News outlets aired endless debates, experts argued on panels, and social media exploded with speculation. Yet no one knew the truth, not the full truth anyway. Only the watcher and the handful of others who had stood beneath the glowing structure carried that burden. But keeping quiet wasn't easy. The visions lingered in their minds, haunting them during the day and invading their dreams at night. They saw flashes of alien landscapes, heard whispers in languages they couldn't understand, and felt an unshakable sense that Earth was being studied, not maliciously, but methodically. Like lab rats in a cosmic experiment. Determined to make sense of it all, the group met secretly in an abandoned barn on the outskirts of town. They brought whatever tools they could gather: laptops, notebooks, cameras, even a portable radio transmitter. Someone suggested trying to recreate the mathematical sequence that had prompted the structure's response. Maybe, just maybe, they could establish communication again. For days they worked tirelessly, testing different combinations of numbers and symbols. Frustration mounted as nothing seemed to work. Then late one evening, something extraordinary happened. As they broadcast a new sequence into the night sky, static crackled through the radio. At first, and it sounded random, chaotic. But then patterns emerged, tones shifting in rhythm, forming melodies that resonated deep within their chests. It was music, unlike anything they'd ever heard before. Alien music. Tears streamed down one woman's face as she listened. "They're answering," she whispered. "They're really answering." The realization hit them all at once. This wasn't just a one-way message. Whoever or whatever was out there wanted to communicate, and they were choosing humanity as their partner in dialogue. Encouraged by the breakthrough, the group pressed on. Over the next few weeks, they refined their methods, learning to interpret the tones and respond in kind. It was slow, painstaking work, but each success brought them closer to understanding. Through trial and error, they pieced together fragments of meaning. Numbers corresponded to distances. Symbols represented concepts like time and space, and certain frequencies evoked emotions, joy, curiosity, even sadness. Their progress didn't go unnoticed. Strange things started happening around the barn. Lights flickered without explanation. Equipment malfunctioned sporadically. Once a shadowy figure appeared outside the window, vanishing when they rushed to investigate. Paranoia crept in, though none of them dared admit it aloud. Were they being monitored, protected, or warned? Then came the night everything changed. When, as they prepared to send another transmission, the air grew heavy, charged with electricity, the ground trembled, and the glowing structure reappeared, larger and more vibrant than before. This time, it didn't wait for them to act. Beams of light shot outward, enveloping the group once more. But instead of visions, they found themselves transported to somewhere else. Wherever they were, it wasn't Earth. The sky above shimmered with colors beyond description, swirling like liquid paint. Strange towers rose in the distance, their surfaces pulsating with light. Creatures moved gracefully among them, their forms fluid and ever-changing. None of it made logical sense, yet it felt undeniably real. A figure approached them, humanoid but not quite human. Its skin glowed faintly, and its eyes held galaxies within them. Without speaking, it extended a hand, gesturing toward the horizon. The message was clear: "Follow me." Hesitant but unable to resist, the group obeyed. What followed was a journey unlike any other. They walked through landscapes that defied physics, witnessed phenomena that challenged their understanding of reality, and encountered beings whose intelligence dwarfed their own. Every step revealed new wonders and new fears. What did these entities want from them? Why had they been chosen? And what role did humanity play in this vast, interconnected universe? Eventually, the figure led them to a massive chamber filled with floating orbs of light. Each orb contained a fragment of knowledge, a piece of the puzzle they'd been trying to solve. As they reached out to touch one, memories flooded their minds. They saw Earth from above, teeming with life, but fragile, vulnerable. They saw humanity's potential for greatness, tempered by its capacity for destruction. Most importantly, they understood why they were being watched. Earth wasn't alone in the cosmos, but it wasn't ready either. For centuries, these beings had observed silently and waiting for humans to evolve past their primal instincts. Now the time had come for a decision. Humanity could continue down its current path, risking self-annihilation, or it could embrace unity, innovation, and sustainability. The choice was theirs, but the consequences would ripple across the stars. When the group returned to Earth, they were forever changed. Physically, they looked the same, but their eyes held a depth that hadn't been there before. And they knew the weight of their responsibility and the urgency of their mission. Gathering in the barn one last time, They vowed to share what they'd learned, but carefully. Not everyone was ready for the truth. Some might reject it outright, others might exploit it for personal gain. But if they could inspire even a fraction of humanity to look beyond themselves, to strive for something greater, then their journey would be worth it. As the watcher gazed up at the night sky, he felt a strange mix of hope and dread. The galaxy was watching, yes, but it was also waiting to see if humanity could rise to meet its expectations. And he knew deep down that the hardest part was only beginning. The group knew they couldn't stay silent forever. What they had seen, what they had experienced, it wasn't just for them. It belonged to everyone. But how do you tell the world that aliens exist, that Earth is being observed like a specimen under a microscope, and that humanity's future depends on choices we make today? They weren't politicians or scientists. They were ordinary people thrust into an extraordinary situation. And yet, the weight of responsibility pressed down on them with every passing day. At first, they tried subtle approaches. They leaked fragments of their story online. Cryptic posts about patterns in the stars, hints at advanced civilizations, and questions about humanity's place in the universe. Some dismissed it as nonsense. But others listened. Curiosity grew, and soon forums buzzed with theories connecting their cryptic messages to recent UFO sightings and government secrecy. People began piecing things together, even if they didn't fully understand what they were uncovering. But subtlety only went so far. As weeks turned into months, global tensions escalated. Governments scrambled to address the growing hysteria. Military jets chased unidentified objects across skies worldwide, often returning empty-handed. Commercial flights reported near misses with strange crafts that vanished without explanation. In one chilling incident, a passenger plane disappeared over the ocean, only to reappear hours later with no memory of what had happened. Passengers described feeling asleep during the gap, though none could explain why. Fear spread faster than facts. Protests erupted in cities around the globe, demanding transparency from leaders who seemed either clueless or deliberately evasive. Conspiracy theories flourished, ranging from plausible to absurd. Some claimed Earth was under invasion. Others believed governments were staging elaborate hoaxes to distract from economic crises. Amid the chaos, the Watcher and his group realized their cautious approach wasn't enough. If they wanted to prevent panic or worse, they needed to step forward. Their decision came after a particularly harrowing event. A major city woke up one morning to find its power grid completely shut down. Phones, computers, traffic lights, all dead. At first, residents thought it was a cyber attack or natural disaster. Then they noticed something stranger: symbols etched into buildings, roads, and vehicles. The markings glowed faintly, pulsating with an eerie light. No one could decipher them, but their presence sent shock waves through the population. Panic set in as rumors of an imminent alien invasion swept through neighborhoods. That same morning, the Watcher received another message. This time, it wasn't anonymous. It was unmistakably alien. A series of tones played through his radio, forming a sequence he recognized immediately. It was an instruction, clear and direct. Meet us. Attached were coordinates pointing to a remote mountain range, along with a specific date and time. The group debated whether to go. Was this a trap, a test, or something else entirely? Despite their fears, they agreed there was no turning back. Whatever awaited them at those coordinates might hold the key to calming the storm brewing on Earth. So, armed with cameras, recording equipment, and sheer determination, they set out once again. The journey was grueling. The mountain terrain was treacherous, and the weather unpredictable. By the time they reached the designated spot, exhaustion weighed heavily on them. Yet adrenaline kept them going. As the appointed hour approached, the sky darkened unnaturally, when as if the sun itself had been dimmed. Then it began. Lights descended from above. Not just one or two, but hundreds. They formed a perfect circle overhead, bathing the area in an otherworldly glow. The air vibrated with energy, making it hard to breathe. One by one, beams of light shot downward, enveloping the group. For a moment, everything went white. When their vision cleared, they found themselves standing in a vast open space. Around them, holographic projections flickered to life, displaying scenes from Earth's history. Wars, revolutions, acts of kindness, scientific breakthroughs. It was all there, laid bare for them to see. But these weren't mere images. They were infused with emotion, each scene resonating deeply within them. They felt the pain of conflict, the joy of discovery, the weight of decisions made and undone. Then the projections shifted, showing glimpses of Earth's possible futures. In one timeline, humanity thrived, working together to heal the planet and explore the stars. In another, greed and division led to collapse, leaving the Earth barren and lifeless. The contrast was stark, undeniable. These weren't idle warnings. They were choices. Choices humanity would have to make. A voice echoed in their minds, calm but firm. "You are not alone," it said, "but your path is yours to choose. We watch, we guide, but we cannot intervene. Your survival depends on unity, innovation, and respect for the fragile world you inhabit." As quickly as it had begun, the encounter ended. The lights faded, and the group found themselves back on the mountainside, gasping for air. Their equipment recorded everything: the lights, the projections, the voice, but translating it into words proved impossible. How could they convey the depth of what they'd experienced? How could they make others believe? Back home, they released their footage, knowing it might cost them everything. The reactions were mixed. Some hailed them as heroes, brave enough to share the truth. Others accused them of fabricating evidence or seeking fame. Governments denied any knowledge of extraterrestrial contact, though leaks suggested otherwise. Military forces increased patrols, monitoring reported sightings more aggressively than ever. Amid the turmoil, small changes began to emerge. Scientists collaborated across borders, sharing data and resources in ways they hadn't before. Environmental initiatives gained traction, fueled by renewed urgency to protect the planet. Even everyday conversations shifted, with people asking bigger questions about humanity's purpose and potential. Yet challenges remained. Skeptics dismissed the group's claims, while opportunists exploited the situation for profit. Tensions between nations simmered, threatening to boil over. And above it all, the lights continued watching, waiting to see which path humanity would choose. For the watcher, the burden of knowledge was both a gift and a curse. He saw hope in the small victories, a child planting trees, a community coming together to clean a river, but also despair in the stubbornness of those unwilling to change. Each night he returned to his telescope, gazing at the stars with a mixture of awe and dread. Somewhere out there, eyes were still fixed on Earth, eyes that had seen humanity at its worst, and perhaps at its best. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: the galaxy wasn't done with them yet. The final chapter of humanity's encounter with the unknown began not with a bang, but with silence. After the group released their footage and shared their story, the world held its breath. For days, people waited for confirmation, denial, or some kind of resolution. But none came. Governments remained tight-lipped, military forces stayed on high alert, and the lights in the sky continued their silent vigil. It was as if the universe itself had paused, giving humanity time to reflect. But reflection wasn't easy. Fear still lingered in the air, like a storm cloud refusing to break. Some embraced the idea of extraterrestrial life, seeing it as proof that humanity wasn't alone, that there was something greater out there, watching over them. Others saw only danger, convinced that Earth was teetering on the edge of invasion or annihilation. Debates raged online and offline, dividing families, communities, and nations. Yet amidst the chaos, a quiet movement began to take shape. Inspired by the group's courage, ordinary people started coming together. In living rooms, town halls, and community centers, they gathered to discuss what it all meant. Not just the possibility of alien life, but the deeper questions it raised about humanity itself. What did it mean to be human? How could they rise above their differences and work toward a common goal? And most importantly, how could they ensure that Earth became a place worth sharing with the stars? The Watcher watched these developments from afar, his role shifting from participant to observer. He no longer sought answers. He already had them. Instead, he focused on listening to the whispers of hope, the murmurs of change, the faint but growing chorus of voices calling for unity. Each night he returned to his telescope, scanning the skies not out of curiosity, but out of gratitude. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for certain: humanity had been given a second chance. Then, without warning, the lights returned. It happened on a crisp autumn evening, when the world least expected it. Across continents, people looked up to see the same sight: the glowing orbs descending from the heavens, forming perfect circles above cities, deserts, oceans, and forests. This time there was no fear, no panic, just awe. Millions stood outside, gazing upward as beams of light swept across the landscape, illuminating everything below. The Watcher felt the pull before anyone else. A warmth spread through his body, gentle yet insistent, drawing him toward the nearest beam. Around him, others experienced the same sensation. Without speaking, they moved forward, stepping into the light together. For a moment, everything disappeared: the ground beneath their feet, the sounds of the world around them, even the passage of time itself. Then clarity emerged. They found themselves standing in a vast chamber, surrounded by beings unlike anything they'd imagined. These weren't the fluid, ever-changing forms they'd encountered before. These entities were solid, their presence commanding yet peaceful. Their eyes glowed softly, reflecting the light of countless stars. They didn't speak, not with words, but their message was clear. Through visions and emotions, the group understood. Humanity wasn't being judged. It was being guided. The Watchers in the sky weren't conquerors or invaders. They were guardians, tasked with nurturing civilizations capable of coexisting with the cosmos. For centuries, they had observed Earth, waiting for humans to evolve past their primal instincts. Now the time had come for a decision. The beings showed them two paths. One led to destruction, a future where greed, hatred, and ignorance consumed the planet, leaving it barren and lifeless. And the other offered salvation, a world where humanity embraced its potential, working together to heal the earth and reach for the stars. Both futures were possible, but only one could become reality. The choice was theirs. When the vision ended, the group found themselves back on Earth, standing beneath the fading lights. Tears streamed down their faces as they processed what they'd seen. There was no doubt now. Humanity stood at a crossroads. Every action, every choice, it mattered more than ever before. Word spread quickly. The group shared their experience openly this time, knowing the stakes were too high for secrecy. Their message was simple. The galaxy was watching, yes, but it wasn't waiting to intervene. It was waiting to see if humanity could rise to meet its expectations. Could they put aside their differences? Could they protect the fragile planet they called home? Could they prove themselves worthy of joining the cosmic community? Responses varied. Some dismissed the story as fiction, clinging to skepticism rather than hope. Others took it to heart, channeling their energy into positive change. Environmental movements gained momentum, fueled by renewed determination to combat climate change. Scientists collaborated across borders, sharing knowledge and resources in ways they hadn't before. Artists, writers, and musicians drew inspiration from the encounter, creating works that celebrated humanity's resilience and potential. But even governments began to shift. Classified documents leaked, revealing decades of secret research into UFOs and extraterrestrial phenomena. Public pressure forced leaders to acknowledge the truth, not just about alien life, but about the urgent need for global cooperation. Treaties were signed, conflicts de-escalated, and efforts to address inequality intensified. Slowly but surely, humanity began to unite, not perfectly, not completely, but enough to spark real change. For the Watcher, but the transformation was bittersweet. He'd spent years searching for answers, driven by a desire to understand the mysteries of the universe. Now he understood more than he ever thought possible, and it humbled him. Each night he returned to his telescope, gazing at the stars with a sense of wonder that never faded. The blinking light was gone, replaced by a steady glow that seemed almost approving. As months turned into years, the lights in the sky became less frequent, eventually disappearing altogether. Some wondered if the Watchers had left for good, while others believed they were still there, silently observing from afar. Either way, their presence lingered, in the minds of those who had witnessed them, in the actions of those inspired by their message, and in the collective consciousness of a species learning to look beyond itself. The watcher often thought about the choices humanity had made and the ones still ahead. There would always be challenges, setbacks, moments of doubt, but for the first time in history, people were looking up, not with fear, but with hope. They saw not just stars, but possibilities, not just distances, but connections, not just themselves, but something greater. And so, life went on. Cornfields swayed in the breeze, towns buzzed with activity, and the world kept spinning beneath an endless sky. But everything had changed. Who humanity had been given a glimpse of its place in the cosmos, a reminder that they were part of something vast, beautiful, and profoundly interconnected. The watcher smiled as he adjusted his telescope one last time. Whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for sure. The galaxy was still watching, and this time, humanity was ready to shine.